Perfect. So the last section I really wanted to talk about, and I think, again, I will say another huge opportunity for HIM professionals is really this whole cybersecurity world that we're living in. And it's not just obviously healthcare, it's every single industry. It's our personal lives too. I'm sure we all get different types of, phishing emails or something that's coming to us, but this is definitely where our biggest threat to the greater or larger amount of people are. So, we talked about the onesie twosies. Now, these are the data breaches that you're really going to see the greater 500. And remember that, about 78% of them in 2022 were due to hacking and IT incidents. So part of the challenge is that the FBI has came out and said, healthcare, you are at risk because you're not ready for this. Spoofing, phishing, ransomware continues to overwhelm healthcare systems. Janelle, I'll send you that one that was just from, I think it was earlier this week, but it's really fascinating because we as health information professionals sometimes don't always realize how access to information actually is such a patient safety and a necessity in healthcare organizations. If you think about that, part of it is, we're not doctors, nurses, we're not in the front line, but having access to that information or not having access can create huge patient risks. So I think it's important for us to realize that. And, as we think about how do we interact, or as you start a new job and you're, working in health information or privacy and security, how do we make sure our leadership, and this has been a challenge I will tell you that I face on a day in and day out. And again, my world isn't direct patient care, so it's a little bit different. So actually, I should probably just talk about the issue that I was dealing with this morning, because it was kind of, again, fascinating. But one of the things that we require, we have multiple different systems we log into to do our work. Most of them are through a web page, right? So it's not like we have an application sitting on our network that they go to. It's all SaaS based, all software as a service. So they go to the website and they put in their username and password. We require staff to not save their usernames and passwords, because if they save their usernames and passwords, even though I can't see what the password is, if someone's smart enough, they can reverse engineer it and figure it out. So ultimately, what happened is a phishing attempt happened. So someone got an email at our organization that said, your username and password is expiring. Please click here to change it. And so that user clicked there and put in their username and password. However, it was a phishing email and it went to a spoofed website, right? So, it's looks like you're logging in Microsoft. It's not really Microsoft. I put in my username, I put in my password, and all of a sudden I gave my username and password out to the world. Now, the unfortunate thing of that happened is, luckily, I don't believe there was any data breach. We're still doing in the investigation, but now all of our systems that are used to support our clients and our network providers, they now have my username and password, because I use the same username and password for every single one of my applications that I log into. And I have them all saved on my computer, and I have them all linked in my email. And now someone has access to my email. So how would you respond, right? I want you to think about like that. This is me. This is literally me this morning. Again, I'm not a security engineer, and I'm not I don't necessarily do any of the forensic type evidence, but I do have the ability to manage the incident that's happening as we speak. The first thing I always have our employees do is, when something like this happens, change your password immediately. The second thing, I work with IT and I start having them run access reports and making sure, looking at IP addresses to see where access is being logged into, where are people logging into. And then I also set up alerts on the account. So if people are logging, we're Minnesota, Wisconsin based basically. So if people are logging in outside of Minnesota and Wisconsin, we get alerts and they're blocked from being able. So that's what we're living in right now. So now we are going to start the investigation just to make sure there was no additional logins or no one gained access to those other systems, because all those other systems are linked on our website because our providers also use them, or our clients use them. So it's just kind of a spiral that happens, but I think we're in the clear, but I'm not sure. So that's kind of the fun. I personally love it. Like, I love the investigation. It's very frustrating because I educate people all the time on not doing this, but part of it too is some of these emails are really good. So anyways, that's basically what I was dealing with this morning. But cybersecurity is, I always call it a buzzword, right? It's hacking, it's ransomware, it's viruses. Viruses in computers work the same way as they do in humans. They attack one and they're all connected. Everybody can get it. Malicious software attacks. Zero-day exploits are basically when there's some type of risk that's a vulnerability that there's no patch. So you'll hear like there's a zero-day exploit in Microsoft, for example. Microsoft has to hurry up and come with a patch to protect it because there's a vulnerability there that exists. But I will tell you 99% of the time, all of these cybersecurity things come through what they are considered phishing emails, right? So phishing is very similar. The intent is, it's not phishing as we're going to go into Lake Superior or whatever, but the intent is the same. You're trying to lure someone in. Cyber criminals are trying to lure someone in to provide information such as your username and password. They have, phishing schemes sometimes don't have specific targets. They have spelling errors, etc. And then you have what's considered spear phishing. So this would be like like getting an email from the president of St. Scholastica saying, I have something for you to, like, Janelle, I have something for you to do to me. Can you text me your phone number? Well, okay, like you get an email from an executive or a president or, of the organization or something. You're like, I better respond to this because I don't want to be, non-responsive and for them to think I'm not a good employee. But sometimes spear phishing happens where it's coming from someone and it's trying to get you to provide information. So I'll tell you about an example, a spear phishing that I just helped an organization with. And this was shocking, actually, but the individual, I received an email from the CEO saying, I'm so proud of all of our office managers. They have like 7 or 8 offices, and I want to get them all $150 electronic Target gift card. And so can you click on this link and buy these gift cards? And then after you buy these gift cards, send me all of the, electronic certificate numbers so we can get them to them and they can have their certificate. So this person, it looked like it came from the CEO to another leader in the organization. The other leader responded back and forth with the CEO like 4 or 5 times, ended up buying the Target gift cards and got the e-certificates so that they could use them. And then she picked up and called this is what she did. Sorry. She started a new email message to the CEO and she said, hey, I have all of the codes. Do you want me to just email them to you? How do you want me to do it? And he called her and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, what do you, and so she then looked back at the email. And even though it came from Danika Brinda, CEO, the email address was like Princess Danika at AOL.com or something like that, right? It wasn't an actual email address coming from the company. It was a false information. So luckily they didn't provide the e-gift certificate numbers to the cyber criminal because that was what they're trying to get out of that. And obviously there's no PHI in this example, but they were able to return them to Target as well. But that's how it can happen, right? That's an example of how quickly. And again, you're thinking, oh yeah, they've been great. I want to provide our office managers with these gift certificates. So, and then there's considered whaling, which is like spear phishing, but it's to the CEO or, to a provider. So if you think about who's posted on the website, a lot of times those are the people that they go after and they create these spear phishing or whaling attacks from there. And again, what are they trying to do? There's multiple different types of phishing attempts. There's basically, a basic phishing attempt where, creating a link that looks like something to make you want to click on something. I get emails all the time. Your password has been compromised. Those are really what they're trying to do. Imposter scams. So someone pretending to be someone else or family member, friend asking you to wire money, whatever it may be. Or maybe this can be your long lost relative has passed away in, the United Arab Emirates and they left you $2 million and I need your social security number and date of birth and I'll get you a first class ticket to get your money. It's probably not correct, but that's imposter scams. The U1 scams are big. You won money, you won an iPad, whatever it may be. They're just trying to pull information out. We see actually with the COVID-19, pandemic, we've seen a lot of healthcare scams. For example, click here, put in your name, address, your social security number, you'll get your 10 free COVID tests sent to your house. So some of that was actually put out there. Tech support emails are, failing, your account's been compromised. And then ultimately some of the things they're trying to do is identity theft as well. So there's a lot of different types of phishing attempts. And I will tell you, these criminals are getting really good. But one of the things we're seeing, and kind of something for you to put in your brain as you're listening to me talk about cybersecurity, is that a lot of organizations will be required to have cybersecurity insurance. And now the cybersecurity insurers are saying, tell me how you're complying with not only HIPAA, but tell me how you're protecting against cyber criminals. Show me that you're testing your staff, that, they know what a phishing email is and that they won't click on it. Like, this is part of what they're doing. And actually, this is where this document that I had you guys read. Oh, I have a blur on, so you probably can't read it, but the cybersecurity documentation I sent to all of you really tries to address some of this as well. So it tries to look at how can we prevent what happens when something happens, and then how do we educate our staff. So this actually sets up some, expectations that you can use to be able to work on that. So I thought we'd look at a couple of phishing emails so you can kind of see what I look for when I see them. And actually, this is based on federal guidance as well. So these are all actual emails, by the way, too. So this is an example where our accounting department got an email from this Vivat Vision Travel about paying an invoice. So we're supposed to click on this, and there's our remittance advice, and we should pay it. So what was the first thing you guys would look at and say, is this really an email that I should be paying? I always tell people the first thing to look at is the email address. This will tell you what do I do business with, someone by this name, or with Vivat Vision Travel? If the answer is no, it's probably a phishing attempt. The other thing you can look at is the style of email. So typically we write in full sentences. I say typically because I've seen my children write, and my daughter's like, I don't like capital letters, so I just don't use them. But we normally write in full sentences, capital letters, a period or punctuation at the end. But you can see this has bad, style. So good afternoon, space, comma, space, please, on and on. So that would be another indication as well. And here's another example where Amazon has actually sent you an email. Thank you. Click here. You bought this device and you're thinking, I didn't actually buy this. So what could I do? Again, look at that email address, because if it's actually coming from Amazon, it probably wouldn't be coming from Samuel4654bro@gmail.com. The other thing you can do is, this is not actually Amazon's support signature. So you can, or support phone number. So you can actually just type that phone number in. And a lot of times they'll say, hey, this is a phishing scam. And this happened to my dad last week. He got an email that said, you bought this through PayPal, and click here to finish your transaction. And he's like, I didn't buy any. I don't even know what PayPal is. I didn't buy anything. So and I tell him this all the time. My dad called the phone number, and now he's like getting bombarded. And I'm like, Dad, Google the phone number first before you call it. So now he's getting bombarded by all these things because they found out there's a real human on the other side. He didn't lose any money or anything, but now I'm like, Google it before you call it when you don't know, or when you say, I didn't buy anything through, to help that. That's a way to be able to tell. Again, here's some examples. These are those multi printer fax copier machines. So again, you can send yourself an email of a document that you scanned in. This is an example where it's, coming from a Xerox fax machine internally within our company, but it looks like it's coming from, a Williams at Prosper and Innovation. That would be another example of, what you can look at. The other thing on the right-hand side that I always tell people too is, like, so it's coming from prosperinnovation.com, but if you look at the bottom, it says this is from a different company.com security maintenance. So those are kind of things you can look at. I always tell people to hover over the links, don't click on them, and see where they would bring you. Because if you hover over them, it pops up the URL and you can see if it's a legitimate site you would want to go to. So what do you do if you get phishing emails? Again, never click on a link, educate your staff. Do not open any attachments, never provide personal information. Make sure if you're putting your username and password in, it's a legitimate website. Do not reply to the sender. In my dad's case, don't call the sender. If you are concerned about an email, don't forward it, report it, delete it. And I always tell people, and all of you may have to educate someday as well, but if people did something, make sure that they report it, because reporting it, you can stop it early, but if you just let it go, sometimes it gets worse. In addition, we have malicious landing pages. So this is just an example for those of you who can tell pretty quickly some of the things you might find. First of all, it's not a legitimate Apple website for Apple users that might be out there. It doesn't have a navigation and footer. So it doesn't say, you know, on the bottom, like at, apple.com or, at 2023 Apple or something like that. That's what that's referring to. Apple is actually spelled incorrectly. It's spelled as a PEL, but a lot of times we as humans work so fast that we don't see simple things like that. So that's what they trick us. And then for those of you who might be Apple users, you know that the Apple password and the Apple user ID are usually on two separate pages. So those are just things you can think about. I will tell you, we normally don't look at URLs when we type our username and password in, but I know I don't always, but I'm getting better to just pay more attention to that. Because it could be as simple as this, adding a second N in Amazon, and all of a sudden, you're logging into somewhere else. Now, the companies, what they try to do is they try to buy all these different versions of, like, Amazon may buy this URL and just redirect you to their regular website. But that's why you see some of these challenges. And I mean, what the intent of this is spoof. So I put in my username and password, all of a sudden it's going to transmit it to the cyber criminal and someone's going on a shopping spree in my Amazon account. In addition, if cybersecurity isn't enough with emails, we also have what they consider schmishing and vishing. So it's super fun to say, but SMS texting, you might get some of these where your bank account's been compromised, click here to change your password. Or vishing is when they voice call, try to get information out of you. So we just have to be aware, because these are all things that we're facing in a regular day. And sometimes we have to know how to respond. Federal government's perspective, this is what they publish specifically to healthcare. Look at the email address, look for generic greetings and signatures. For example, if I always sign my emails, literally, I always sign them, "Thank you, Danika." If all of a sudden I said, signed it, "Thank you and best wishes for a prosperous day, Dr. Danika Brinda," then that would be something that might flag someone who interacts with me. Spoofed hyperlinks, the spelling and layout, the poor grammar and sentence, maybe misspelling of words, or if you have a suspicious attachment. So sometimes how these phishing emails work is if you double click on an attachment, it actually initiates a program. And that's how, like, for example, ransomware can get disseminated throughout an organization. So just some guidance. If you're going into a healthcare and you're helping them with this is a good way to create training for your workforce, and training for all workforce, right? Because this is important for everybody to know who gets email at an organization. But it's not if, it's when. 98% of healthcare organizations have received some type of cyber attack, whether it's a phishing email, which is a minimal, right? Unless someone clicks on it and something happens, to having ransomware or losing data or whatever it may be. So making sure you have an incident response plan is intentional. And actually, I find this information that I provided a little bit more about this, they call it the HIPAA, healthcare industry privacy, the practices, is that this kind of came from a regulation called the Healthcare Cybersecurity Act of 2015. And what that was really looking at, it's not necessarily creating new regulations. It was three-part. The first part was the federal government have to do an assessment of what is healthcare's current readiness for cybersecurity issues. The second part of the regulation is they had to come up with a task force that would look at all of the findings from the, what is the current state environment, and then come up with best practices, which is ultimately what this document is. It is the best practices that are broken out by security, by the size of the organization. really intended to help organizations. And if you look at it, it's ultimately trying to help a little bit of the smaller organizations create some best practices for how do we better prepare and protect our organizations from cyber attacks. I would say right now, this is best practice. The one I think cool is that the federal government has actually looked at this and now considers this a security best practice. Why is that important? Because what they say is if you're complying with the HIPAA best practices and you can prove it, then we know that you're most likely complying with HIPAA, and they take that into consideration when they're doing investigations and or enforcement. So this is a great guide as you're starting, potentially a new career or going out to say, let's actually talk about and look at what these are. The downfall of this is that, like I talked about, cybersecurity insurance is saying, hey, let's go look at what they should be doing and let's require them to do it in order to get cybersecurity insurance. This could be a precursor to potential regulatory changes. I guess from the security side, nothing's really changed since 2005. So we shall see. Obviously, technology in 2005 was very different than it is today. But having an incident response plan, training people, knowing how to respond, making sure you have good data backups, those are all going to be important processes because this is going to impact everybody at some point in time. So that is everything that I have for you. I mean, is there any questions? Is there anything that left you scratching your head where you're like, you should have talked more about this, or I want to learn more about this? Anything? I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Hopefully you had a little fun.
Yeah, such good information. I love having you on. You're so dang current. That's my favorite part because I can throw up some slides and be able to say different rules and regulations, but I don't know, the way you bring it in and have a current touch point with actually who you're consulting with and working with that's always my favorite part. So thank you for being with us this morning, even though you had big challenges already before the call.
I know. And, to everybody out there too, Janelle knows how to get a hold of me, but if privacy and security interests you, or if you want to talk about it more, please feel free to reach out to me. I mean, it's my passion. I would say that St. Scholastica made it my passion because, again, I was going through college when these regulations were being implemented. So on my internships, I literally was writing policies and procedures for HIPAA compliance. I had the opportunity, Janelle and I both worked on a grant project where we had so much fun. We got to go into organizations and do risk analysis, and we got to put on doctor's jackets and pretend to be doctors to see if people would stop us and ask us what we're doing. And it's just, in my opinion, if you like the investigation side of the world and, you like the ability to face challenges, I mean, privacy and security is a great place. There's a lot of opportunity, maybe opportunity in places you don't think. So for example, I just was talking, Janelle, I don't know if I told you this, but Best Buy has a whole healthcare side of their business, and they are looking for privacy people. They're looking for privacy analysts to help them. It's just, there's so much opportunity. And I think that, as the definition of healthcare expands, which is one of the things we're seeing. So now, does my app that I can, manage my X, Y, and Z on interact with my provider's, electronic health record? There's some things there. So I've literally worked with organizations that develop apps. I've worked